Welcome to the new quantum era. I'm your host, Sebastian Hassinger, and today I'm excited to be talking with Martin Laforest. Martin has one of the most interesting career arcs I've actually come across in the quantum industry. He did his PhD at the Institute for Quantum Computing at Waterloo, studying under Ray Laflamme, one of the true pioneers in the field. Then he spent 8 years running scientific research at the IQC, so he knows a lot about how to translate this stuff into terms that the general public can understand. After that, he jumped into industry at a post-quantum cryptography startup where he worked alongside some ex-BlackBerry executives. And now he's a partner at Quantacet, which is a quantum-only VC fund based in Quebec. What I love about Martin's perspective is that he's been on every side of this ecosystem, the science, the communication, the startups, and now the investment. And he sits on the advisory committee to Canada's national quantum strategy, so he's also helping shape policy at the national level. Today, we're going to dig into something I think is kind of unappreciated, which is how the province of Quebec in Canada has built one of the most impressive quantum ecosystems in the world. We're talking about a small university in Sherbrooke that made a bet on condensed matter physics back in the 1970s, combined that with a semiconductor fabrication ecosystem that was local, and through really intentional community building has created something truly remarkable. Quebec has invested $400 million in quantum just in the past 3 years, and is really a world leader in many ways. We'll also get into Martin's philosophy on what it takes to build great companies in quantum right now, and why he thinks this is still very much a science problem and an engineering problem, and how collaboration between regions and even countries is actually accelerating the whole field. So let's jump in. Hi, Martin. Thank you very much for joining me today. I was, looking forward to this conversation when we chatted before. We talked about having you on. The first thing I'd love to hear from you. You're a trained physicist with a PhD from Waterloo, and now you're a partner in Quantacet, a quantum-only VC fund based in Quebec. That journey, I'm just really fascinated. How did you get from point A to point B there?
Oh, well, we can spend the whole podcast talking about this. And well, first of all, Sebastian, thank you very much for having me. We just met not so long ago, but I like your vibe a lot. So when I learned that you had a podcast, I'm like, I gotta get on, man. It's I think you and I can have a great chat. So yeah, I'll try to keep it short. Honestly, it's just a series of what could be classified as stupid decision, good timing, being a bit stupid, but so far I have to admit that it's working out a bit. So just to go a little bit through the resume, right? So you mentioned it. I got my PhD in quantum information, which it was in the early days of quantum computing. We're talking about like the 2000s, where the idea of VC investing in quantum or just even having companies was not even a thing. And how did I get there? Happy coincidence and stupid decision again. I was finishing my undergrad at McGill, and then wondering what I do with my life. So we're starting to look, and I had some pretty good GPA. So all my prof was saying like, you should apply to the Ivy School in the United States. That's the way to go, which I did. Got into some of the big schools, the Harvard, the MITs. And in the middle, a certain Raymond Laflamme, which some might know as one of the pioneer of quantum computing, quantum information, was just moving back to Canada to start this big, well, back then it was not a big, but like, there was a big vision to start the Institute for Quantum Computing, the Perimeter Institute. He came to give a talk because it was recruiting students. And I just thought, like, this subject is so cool. Like, I love quantum mechanics. I would like to use it. And quantum information is literally using quantum mechanics to do stuff. And then, Raymond was a fellow Québécois. So I decided to turn down the offers from Harvard, MIT, Cornell to go to, sorry for the expression, but Ontario, a place where I've never heard of before, which I know nothing about. My profs were so disappointed. But turns out that, being there doing my PhD, and when I got there, there was 15 of us. When I left after my PhD, it was like 150. It was the best thing that ever happened to me because I got to do my own research and then I got to be exposed to all of the field of quantum information and quantum computing and sensors. So I was a specialist in spin physics, but got to learn about optics, cold atoms, ion trap, and that sort of. So I got to get a fairly decent breadth of knowledge.
You must have seen
Um,
a lot of really interesting talks from the pioneers. I mean, Waterloo was very quickly one of the main stops, sort of on the circuit of giving talks about the subject.
well, I don't have exact numbers or anything, but I would not be surprised if about today, maybe 50% of anyone in the field has at some point been through Waterloo, either as a student, as a postdoc, as a long-term visitor. Like, yes, I got to meet a lot of people, and still to this day, almost 20 years later, I still capitalize on that. So, I tried the whole postdoc thing. Turns out research was not for me. I was not I'm not the kind of guy who loves to solve the problem no matter what and keep going at it. I more of a guy that like to keep going forward but I love teaching and I love communicating. Obviously, by now you know that I love to talk. So then another stupid thing that I've done, I was visiting back in Waterloo and I just was walking around the walls of IQC. Raymond Laflamme's door was open. He was the director at that time. And I just barged in. I'm like, you know what? This institute needs someone to bring quantum outside of the lab, somebody who can talk. And I want to be that guy. A year later, I was moving back from Europe and starting this job as the first head of scientific outreach at the Institute for Quantum Computing. Did that for 8 years. Got to create educational programs, do government relation. And towards the end, we're talking like 2016, 17. Now there's starting to be a small industry in quantum. And investors started looking into it, and companies started to look into embracing quantum technology. So I got to learn that language a little bit, and got to familiarize myself with sort of the world of industry and investment. And then so I decided to join a startup in post quantum cryptography, which is not my field at all. But it was a startup that was ran by old senior people from BlackBerry, right? So they they built a company worth
Right.
billions of dollars, and then
It
they
gave you
crashed it after that, right? So I figured if I am to learn the ropes of industry, might as well get the white hair and learn from that, right?
absolutely. And I mean, some would say that you learn more about being an operator by failing than you do by
Yeah,
succeeding.
yeah. I wouldn't say that the company I work with failed, but we
No, no,
definitely had
I
a
mean
few missed
BlackBerry. I
shot,
mean,
and then we've learned.
sorry, I mean the
Yeah.
perspective of BlackBerry. BlackBerry is such a spectacular
Oh
rocket
yeah.
ride, and then a series of misfortunes and missteps.
Yeah.
You can't think of actually a more seasoned technology executive than somebody who went through that whole ride.
Yeah, absolutely. And then those were like the old school guys that knew all the tricks of the trade. So I got to learn a lot. But it was a few years that I had my eyes on Sherbrooke in Quebec, right?
Yeah, I
Quebec
was
being
going to
my
ask
home
you.
province.
Right, but I mean, at what point did University of Sherbrooke and the Quebec government's own investment in building an ecosystem, when did that sort of catch your attention? Because that seems like the real catalyst to where you are now, right?
Well, Sherbrooke caught my attention just from what was going on at the University of Sherbrooke, right? I knew a few of the researchers there, especially the young one, Alexandre, David Poulain, right? So we knew those guys, we run into each other, but the science that we're doing, It was a smaller institute than IQC, because IQC was like that big thing backed by a billionaire and tons of money. But Sherbrooke was like a fraction of the funding, but the output was amazing. But also like their vision and their plan. And then the Quebec government back then started to, brought around this idea of innovation zone. And we'll talk a bit more in a minute about this. So, befriended those guys, and it was kind of, written in the sky that I'll probably ended up there at some point. And then one day the phone rang, and then somebody said, "Hey, we're Quebec is starting a VC fund in quantum only to sort of support this entire ecosystem that we're building, and then they're looking for a quantum expert that has a broad knowledge on things that can speak to anybody without the technicalities, which was kind of my specialty at that point. So my first, go back with the story of bad decision. Uh, right, I remember having that phone call on Monday. So that was one of the guy from the University of Sherbrooke. So he connected me with the people behind the fund. So I had a chat with the other partner on Tuesday. On Thursday, I was chatting with three of the main investor. I had a job offer on Friday, and I accepted the next Wednesday.
Fantastic.
All while asking myself, what the hell is a VC and what does it do?
Okay, that doesn't classify as a bad decision, just maybe not fully informed decision.
Yeah. So thankfully, in the meantime, I kind of had, I reached out to a few people that with my background, I ended up in the VC world. So I reached out to like two people and I asked them, what does it mean? And that was like an early stage fund. And never never been a guy about money. My goal in life is not to make money, is to just do great project, help what I can. And then they kind of made me understand that being an early stage VC is not about the goal is to make money, but the goal is not to squeeze dimes out of company. The goal is to create great companies, which then ultimately, if you do a good job, will end up creating money
Right.
for the fund.
The money's
So
a
that's kind of what
byproduct.
appealed to me. Right. So the opportunity to help build 10, 15, 20 companies from the ground up, it was really appealing to me because at the beginning I said I don't like to work on always on the same project and keeping pushing, right? So a little bit of diagnosed ADHD
Sure.
going on here. So
A
now I
little
get to
bit
work
can be
on 15
useful.
projects. It's amazing, right?
Yeah.
So that's
A
been
little
four
bit
years
can be
ago,
useful.
and I haven't regretted it.
Yeah, that's fantastic. It's
Yeah.
interesting. I mean, it sounds like you have been bridging these different worlds all along the way, right? I mean, the communication role at Waterloo, but also you mentioned, sort of interfacing with government and public sector, and now sort of like I would say, the world of the operator, the entrepreneur and the operator with the scientific research world. What do you think is sort of the hardest thing to sort of communicate? Like, what's the thing that people still don't really get about the emerging quantum information technology world?
Oh, this is a extremely complex question, right?
Yeah,
I mean, it goes from the very basic. There's still a lot of people and it's a bit on our shoulder, the quantum community. There's still a lot of people that believe that the quantum computer is this magic box that will solve everything, that is the most powerful thing, that will be better than everything all the time, right? So there's a lot of miscomprehension. It's and the story that I like to tell to people that are a bit our age, the younger don't get the reference, but a lot of people think that it's the difference. Quantum computer is like the Commodore 64 versus the Pentium, right? That's just a better computer, right? So that's one of the big thing that we need to make people understand. And sometimes those people go all the way up to the heads of government, those that signs big checks. So I say it's a bit of our fault, the community. Like it's our job to make sure that the communication and the narrative is truthful, right? So that's kind of the basic one. The other one, which drive me nuts, is that quantum tech equal quantum computing. right? So and don't get me wrong, right? I mean, quantum computing and quantum computers will probably be the one that will bring the most value, will be the most the biggest rupture in technology. But it's not the only thing that we can offer. Quantum communication, cybersecurity, sensors, that sort of thing. They're still very important in the game. Um, and maybe the other one is still a research project,
Yeah,
right?
right.
Which
Super early
sometimes
stage. Yeah.
it's true, right? And if you look at the biggest quantum computing companies that are valued in the billions of dollars, they are still, arguably a bit of a research project,
I
right? I
know.
mean, they have amazing technology. The
Yeah.
engineering is phenomenal, but
Yeah.
it's useless
Yeah.
for now, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But when it's going to get into that quantum advantage, quantum utility, it's $1 trillion business overnight almost.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, but it's not a research project. Like,
Right.
we are setting the course, and then some of the roadmaps that you see out there are extremely aggressive, but they're not completely stupid, right? So
Right.
we're probably like we are. I believe we are walking the line to quantum utility, not cryptography breaking quantum
Right.
computer just yet,
Right.
but
Right.
we're walking right on that line, and
Yeah.
it's a matter of a year or two, maybe
Right.
three, until we start
Right.
offering some advantage. So
Yeah. Well, I
those are
keep telling
messages that,
people what I'm confident about is that they're, like you said, those aggressive roadmaps, one or more of them will very shortly result in a machine that you can't simulate classically anymore. Right. If you get to the sufficient, sort of Hilbert space and
yeah,
connectivity and coherence time, you just can't simulate that classically in any means. So,
yeah.
if there's something useful that machine does, then by definition, that's quantum advantage.
Yeah, that's right. So a machine that cannot be simulated, we already have those, right? I mean, Google was the first one to come around. Xanadu has claimed that. There's a couple coming, but
True.
it's
I
for
mean,
useless
in a general
problem, right?
purpose. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
In a general
yeah. But
purpose sense.
yeah. So there's the
Yeah.
quantum supremacy thing. So that's
Yeah. I
more of
know. I
an
know.
academic kind of achievement, which is a great achievement on its own.
Sure.
But
Sure.
quantum advantage can take many kind of forms, right?
Of
It can
course.
be time saving, can be energy saving, or you can even
Right.
apply that to quantum sensors. Quantum
Right.
advantage give you
Sure.
more selectivity, more precision. Like, it's
Right.
again, the sensors might not be as groundbreaking and $1 trillion business, but they still, I mean, and they exist. They're
Right.
commercialized, right?
Right.
So I find that there's so much attention sometimes to the quantum
Yeah.
computer, and there
Yeah.
should be attention,
Yeah.
that we forget the rest,
Right. Right.
which is
Right.
great for me. I get to invest in those and then capitalize, so it's fine. I get
Yeah.
more choice, right?
Yeah. In a sense, it's the analogy is in the first sort of quantum revolution, we did get the microprocessor, which depends on quantum mechanics for semiconducting to work, right? And doping and all that in the integrated circuit. But you also get the laser and GPS and MRI, and these are all essentially technologies that rely on understanding of quantum mechanics. And the same thing is happening this time. The focus is on
Yeah.
computing technology, but as you say, there's all of these secondary and tertiary and ancillary benefits from the advances in engineering
Yeah.
and understanding that is coming from quantum information science. You mentioned, I think one of the things I find the most fascinating is sort of, you said, aggressive roadmaps, which is good, it's needed, but there's this tension that goes on between, as you said, some things are still research. There's still fundamental science obstacles or achievements that are required to unlock scale or transduction or any number of different topics that are required in those roadmaps. And there's like this, engineering is something that you can manage from an investment perspective, from a risk perspective, from a business perspective. And scientific research is sort of inherently unmanageable because the error bars are, who knows, right? So
Yeah.
as an investor, how do you manage and how do you communicate that sort of tension between those two paradigms?
Well,
Another easy question for you, Mate.
no, no, because it's something we think a lot about, because every now and again, and I would say more often than not now, you see either CEOs of companies or outsiders, but that are thought leaders about technology. So he's like, this quantum thing, it's no longer a science problem; it's only an engineering problem. Come on. We could have said the same thing with the ENIAC when it was vacuum tube and say it's just an engineering problem. It's like, yeah, keep on treating it as an engineering problem, and then you'll keep on trying to shrink down the vacuum tube and then trying to pack, to get bigger and bigger rooms to get more vacuum tube, right? The transistor moment arrived, not out of the dead field, but it arrived from science. So it is true to say that to get to a working quantum computer, it's an engineering problem. Yeah, you can keep on hacking at probably what we have now, and then you'll be able to get a quantum computer that can give you an advantage. But like, can we really claim that today the different modalities, superconducting chips, spin, trap ions, atoms, that they are the absolute one that will allow us to not only do fault tolerant quantum computing, but to do to miniaturize things, to save electricity? It's like, come on, man! Like we need to dream a bit bigger than this. And look, we've had personal computers since 1984. You go to universities and there are still fundamental researchers in computer science. AI came from fundamental science, and now look at the impact it had, right? So I think that's another message, to your previous question, that we need to keep on reinforcing. We need to invest on the commercialization, but we cannot stop or even back out of investing in fundamental research, because that's where the breakthrough will come. That's where we'll get our transistor moment or ChatGPT moment. We need discovery and materials to allow us to do things not at 10 millikelvin, or in vacuum chamber, being able to go out in the right. So we need all of this. So it is still a science problem. It is more and more of an engineering problem, but they're not exclusive at all. And whenever we do, I have the chance to sit on the advisory committee to the Canadian National Strategy in Quantum. And the thing we always push is like, we need more money. Don't take it from science. It's
Right.
new money. Like, we need new money.
Yeah.
Like, don't touch this, because then we're just shooting ourselves in the foot.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's very much of a science problem, but engineering is more and more important.
Yeah.
For sure.
Well, that goes back to your experience sort of bridging those worlds, right? I mean, that's a perfect example of educating the public sector leadership and sources of funding on it's not a take from this side to give to this side. We actually need the fundamental scientific research in addition to bootstrapping the early stages of an industrial ecosystem. That I find that really fascinating, and it's really interesting to me how, I mean, your position as an investor, as a VC fund in a province, Quebec, which is sort of in many ways, in my opinion, is leading in the country in terms of bringing the right ingredients together and coordinating those ingredients for building an ecosystem in a country that is also very serious about building the ecosystem. How do you think about sort of the national level strategy versus the regional development ecosystem?
Well,
it's an easy question for a Quebecois person to answer, right?
Yes, exactly, right. You're bringing the crux of Canadian politics right here. So maybe for the non-Canadian listener, I'll give a quick political thing, how Canada works, right? So Canada, large country, but small population, 40 million people. Historically very strong in fundamental research, in many disciplines. We've historically, again, has been struggling to capitalize on the fruit of those research. So we're commercially challenged. Let's put it that way. But usually investment in innovation and research happen at the federal level. So the government of Canada takes care of this. But Canada also have 10 different provinces, 3 territories, but The 10 provinces, usually they have different responsibility than the federal. Um, like schooling system, healthcare, that sort of thing. But they can also invest in innovation and research. Not all provinces do, or province do at certain level, but I would say Quebec, Alberta, BC, and Ontario are quite active. So it means that in the case of Quebec, you mentioned it, Quebec been quite aggressive in investing in quantum for the past 5 6 years. Just in the past 3 years, they invested $400 million, which is significant, right? Quebec is a province of 9 million people with a long history of excellence in quantum, and I'll come back to that in a second. So now you sort of have a Quebec-led strategy led by the government of Quebec with a federal strategy led by a federal government, and these two are not necessarily buddies. Okay, sometimes they can work well together, sometimes not. And you mentioned Quebec, being the French province, being the people fighting for a right to keep our language and survive. Sometimes it crashes a little bit. But I would say I think in quantum, at least we're aligned in the sense of Canada and Quebec has been punching quite above its weight since the beginning in quantum research, and we all want Canada and Quebec to be bigger than its size. To be a leading nation and not just a following nation. So at least we're aligned on this. But then there's always the funding, who's paying what, and you can get funding from both, but so it's a line at the 10,000 foot view, and then sometime on the floor. But I'll say, and here's I speak because I only came back to Quebec 4 years ago after spending 18 years in Ontario, the next province. I'll say there's a more willingness to make things happen between the different level of governments than in other issues, other societal issues. So you know, but when I moved back to Quebec, I had a little pet project in my head. It's like, I'm a adopted Ontarian, but a native Quebec. I'm gonna fix this problem between Canada. Like, I know people from both sides.
Yeah.
I was a little cocky. Man, I still don't realize how big of an issue it can be. So yeah, it's not fixed yet, but we're working on it, and I think there's some good heart on both sides.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
I think that if you succeed sufficiently in leading in, as you said, that the emergence of the market that's going to emerge from these sets of technologies, the rewards are big enough for the whole country. Like,
yeah,
if you can actually forge a path to being a pioneer, which you have been doing successfully, and not a follower, then I mean that the rewards will more than justify and will drive a lot of very happy collaboration, I think, across the
yeah.
country.
Yeah, and I think, well, you mentioned earlier on that you think Quebec has maybe the most momentum in Canada, and I'll think I'll agree with this, although it's a bit of a
You're
statement because
biased.
I
Yeah.
am in Quebec, right? I'm biased, but I did 18 years in Ontario, so and this is not removing anything else from what's going on in Waterloo and Toronto or even Calgary. Like, it's amazing thing is happening. But yeah, there's a lot of momentum in Quebec, but I think it's also built in the way we're trying to do things. Um, so I mentioned that University of Sherbrooke had a long history in quantum, and let me give you a quick history. So University of Sherbrooke is one of the small university in Quebec, in the province. It's not really small anymore, but back in the days, in the 70s, it was one of the smallest. And they had like a bit of a fledgling physics department. They were running out of funding. They were having a hard time keeping the lights on. So at some point, they came to a crossroad. They had to do something. It's either we shut the door or we do something that out of the ordinary, so we can keep going. And they make a bet back then that the entire physics government, the other physics department would focus entirely on condensed matter physics, which today is known as quantum materials. So go around the world. I don't know many physics department that focus on
What
one
year
thing.
would that have been?
It's in the 70s.
Wow.
I don't know
Yeah.
the exact date, but it's a while back. So what that means is that throughout the year, the University of Sherbrooke, albeit quite small, not in the top 100 university in the world, but quite mighty, uh, strong in engineering, strong in science, very close to and working with industry. Well, they were all working in condensed matter physics, so it means that they stacked on infrastructure, on dilution fridges, helium circulator. So it built a critical mass of infrastructure and know-how, and not just like PhD level physics know-how, like technicians know-how and machine shop know-how and prototyping know-how. And in parallel to this, up the street in Bromont, about 45 kilometers away, uh, a little hidden gem of Quebec that virtually nobody knows. There's an industrial park of semiconductor fabrication. So IBM has a fabrication plant there. The Teledyne DASA has one, and they also have a something called the C2MI, where it's a foundry, but for small batch, and at the same time a packaging research place. So it's kind of a great segue between prototyping and large scale manufacturing. So all of this existed before the idea of saying, like, let's build a massive ecosystem
Right.
of
And
quantum.
And Martin, would that industrial park have been a result of essentially they were trying to recruit out of the fact that Sherbrooke was cranking out these condensed matter physicists and engineers who knew how to run the physical plant required for that? Is that sort of an offshoot of that?
I don't think it was an outshoot because of this. I think it was like, right. I'll take everything with a grain of salt. I'm still a newbie to the region, but I think it was a play more in microelectronics. IBM was here, so that's C2MI that I talked. Like, it's a partnership between the University of Sherbrooke, IBM, and C2MI, but it's open to anyone. Like, it's a user facility open to anyone who passed the test, of course.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so it was not a result of the quantum thing happening. But now, because back then for quantum, you just needed a prototyping facility, which Sherbrooke has. It's called a 3IT, usual academic, stacked to the gills for doing microelectronics, nanoelectronics. But now C2MI, now that quantum is an industry, we need to start making, we need to start manufacturing. We need to start, it's not just one chip at the time. Now it plays a role. And then they're just about to open like a fabrication line specifically for superconducting chips for quantum. So, and that's the kind of the point I was heading at. We didn't have to build everything from scratch. Most of the things was already here, and then we capitalize on years and years and years of fundamental research and microelectronics. So when you look at other ecosystems saying, like, hey, we're going to build this, we're going to build that, we're going to do this to help the companies, well, you come to Sherbrooke and everything is running. Right? We have the fabrication facility. We have the production facility. We even build a mutualized lab where we have 6 dilution fridge, electronic stack that is owned by no one. And what I mean by this is that it's 100% for rental. You have a company, you don't have access to hardware, you can rent time on this. You arrive, it's yours. We did the same thing with a quantum communication test bed, where it's built, it's running. There's some QKD on it. There's some entanglement exchange on it. There's some PQC. You want it, but it's owned by no one. So companies that wants to have access to test bed, Nowadays, it's like 40 test bed in the world, but they're always owned by someone. So you
Yeah,
can
yeah,
never
yeah.
really have
Well, and
access.
that must be why. So I read that some European hardware vendors have actually been attracted to Quebec for part of their R&D and prototyping. So it must be to take
Yeah,
advantage of that infrastructure. So there's even
exactly.
a sort of a foreign investment view of this as well.
Yeah. I mean, we built it with that in need, that in mind, right? Some of the local company needed this, but really we built it to offer a service to the world. And then at the same time, well, if we can help attract companies, open like we don't want like we're not the business of convincing them to move their headquarter, but if they can come here, open an office because we have that infrastructure, right? So this is kind of to come back to Sherbrooke has the momentum is because we're not starting from scratch. We're capitalizing on what we already had, and also the part that I love the most that really attracted me here is that sense of community and collaboration. Right? Sherbrooke is a small town doing big things. So I don't know if you're a small town, if you're from a small town, but I am. I'm from a 10,000 people town. We always have a bit of a chip on our shoulder, right? Always have because we're always looked down from people from the big cities, right? When I went to McGill, like I was no kidding, some student thought I was like the geography hire, right? They needed to get someone from the boonies, so they
Right,
picked
right,
that guy.
right.
So of course, when I was scoring a scholarship, I was like, and the small town guy just showed you. So I don't say that Sherbrooke everybody is like this, right? But there's this sentiment of we need to work together to make it work. So it's a big ecosystem. There's fabrication facilities, there's lab, there's an investment fund, there's an incubator, there's an ecosystem kind of overall organization. We're constantly talking to each other. We try to not step on each other's foot. And I think when I look at other ecosystem that more have like a collection of individual, I think that's a very good ingredient, and it makes you feel part of something bigger than you.
That's
And that
fantastic,
that
Martin.
is the it's a phenomenal feeling because we're all going at the same place.
That's great. It's funny
We don't
because
always
for
agree, though. I mean, we're
that's
it's
fine. That's
it's not
okay.
perfect.
That's part of the scientific method too. Disagree with
Yeah,
one another.
yeah,
It's terrific because what you just articulated it puts a very sharp focus on why I have been telling people in terms of national and regional quantum initiatives to build an ecosystem. I think that I see Quebec and the Netherlands as the two places that are the furthest ahead and have built the most impressive kind of collaborative infrastructure for the whole sort of
yeah,
virtuous circle to actually work. That whole community to produce more than the sum of the parts, right? That it's
yeah.
like leveraging up
Netherlands
the
is
small town.
Netherlands is a great inspiration. I thought that I did a postdoc. It happened to be in the Netherlands, but before this whole thing started. But I still know people. So I
Which university?
in Delft, like
In Delft. Okay, yeah, yeah.
the mothership
The
of
mothership.
the mothership. So I've been back there. It's quite amazing what they've done, and very ambitious. And what I like is that the Dutch and the Canadians are very similar in the sense that we try to not take too much risk. We're not risk taking, but what they've done in quantum is very un-Dutch. And I've been known in the past for saying a few things that in quantum we need to be unapologetically un-Canadian, right? We need to break the Canadian way of doing things, and that's what they've done in Netherlands. And again, not everything is perfect, but we definitely, I think they got a lot of things right, and then we're looking that way. And Chicago did the same. Chicago is quite impressive what's going on there, right?
Very
Lots
much
of
so.
money, very good leadership. And in Glen also. In Glen, what I like with them is that they did long-term commitment, right? Strategies on over 10 years. Here in Canada, it's like 3 years at the time. It's kind of hard to. it's kind of hard to build what you don't know. So we're working on that. But and to that point, we're all building ecosystem, and we're all trying to have sort of kind of the one stop shop. But the last thing we should do is treat each ecosystem as its own little island. Collaboration is more important than ever, especially in the geopolitical climate that we have today. We all have something to offer. We all have something to learn from each other. So, strong ecosystem, open to other ecosystem. That's a given. The mobility has to happen. We need to compete, but we need to be friends.
Yeah. Well, Martin, that's fantastic. It's been terrific talking with you. I think the themes that you're talking about in Quebec are incredibly important to anybody trying to build a quantum ecosystem around the world. So I think Quebec continues to be an example, and Quantacet is a significant, critical part of that ecosystem development. So I really
don't know if
appreciate
I'll
what
go
you're
as
doing.
far as saying we're an example. I would say we're trying something different, and hopefully it works. We'll do our best, and then we want to learn from people, and if one people wants to learn from us, we'll do. But we don't claim to have the magic recipe. But we'll
But
try our
that
recipe.
Canadian
And
humility feels like a really important example to the world.
look, there's a lot of things to build before we can claim that we figured it out. Let's put it
Exactly.
this way.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much.
No, thank you, Sebastian. It was great.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the podcast, a production of the New Quantum Era, hosted by me, Sebastian Hassinger, with theme music by OCH. You can find past episodes on www.newquantumera.com or on Blue Sky at newquantumera.com. Thanks again to the support from APS for this episode, and thanks to Emily Edwards for a really enjoyable conversation. If you enjoy the podcast, please subscribe and tell your quantum curious friends to give it a listen.